Today I have a very special guest, Thapan Dubayehudi. Welcome, Thapan.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Thapan is an author and teacher of foreign languages. He's a polyglot. He speaks about 17 languages, and he's a Cochini Jew. So we're going to have a very interesting conversation today about Jews from India that many of our listeners or viewers may never heard of. So I'm really excited in doing this interview today. So welcome, Tapan.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure having you as my interviewer, Paushali.
Yeah, and so could you please share a bit about your background, where you're from, where you were born, maybe, and who you are and what you do in a bit more detail?
So I was born in Cochin, south of India, state of Kerala. Many of you know that there is a Jewish community, 2000 plus year old Jewish community in the south of India. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't even know that there are Jews in India. But yeah, we'll come to that later. Um, Grew up in Kochi and then moved to the UK and then moved to Austria. So living in Vienna. And I have a bachelor's degree in informatics and computer applications, but I never use it. It's gathering dust. I teach languages. I love languages. I'm a member of HYPEA, the International Hyper Polyglot Association. Yeah, that's about right. I speak around 17 languages. I started learning really young. My father introduced me to a small piece of paper with the Cyrillic alphabet, the Russian alphabet, when I was in my early teenage. And from then I was hooked. I learned the Cyrillic alphabet in an hour or two, and I started writing stuff in English, but with Russian alphabets. And then I never looked back. So year after year, I went on YouTube, Duolingo, other apps with friends all across the world. So that's how I got into languages. I now made it into a career. I teach Hebrew. I teach a number of languages. Um, and what else? I served in the British Army in between
Oh,
when I was
wow.
in the UK.
Oh.
And here I am.
Wow, like you're a real man of all talents. And if anybody have anytime anybody's heard that Jews are intelligent, then one needs to just look at you.
Oh yeah.
Now, I'm just curious, what are some of the languages that you know?
Oh well, that's the second question that everyone asks. When they hear that I speak a number of languages, they say, "Well, list them out." Okay, let's start with the languages in India. So, because I'm originally from Kerala, there's of course Malayalam, and then Tamil because it's very similar to Malayalam, and then Hindi because I studied in school. So those are the three Indian languages. English, obviously, German, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, Russian, Ukrainian, Dutch, Norwegian, Swedish, Hebrew. My Arabic is pretty good. I'm learning Chinese now. My Japanese is also pretty good. I can read and write pretty good Korean, Turkish. So yeah.
Wow,
Right.
how do you even retain everything in your
Oh,
mind?
it's not so yeah. The thing that I would like to clear up is that I don't have a linguistic super brain, not a linguistic superman. It's really, really possible for almost everyone. It's just that I have a unnatural amount of interest in languages. So this is like a crazy passion
Mhm.
from my side. You could also do it. Anyone listening can also do it. I'm just as intelligent as you are. I have no other endowment with regards to my brain. If you are willing to put in the effort and put in maybe an hour or two, or maybe even 45 minutes every day, you can attain fluency in even the most difficult of languages. It is possible. As I think it was Elon Musk who once said, you could study rocket science without even seeing the inside of a university from the internet. Everything's there on the internet. You
Mm,
have to know where to look, and
mm.
you have to have the heart and stomach to put your effort in. Then you can.
Guess one needs to be curious, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I have a passion for languages as well. I mean, I thought I could speak many languages. I mean, I can speak seven or eight, but nowadays, I mean, I can properly speak only like maybe four. But Yeah, it's great that you speak so many languages. It's so helpful, right? Now, I would like to ask you, how was it growing up in India and Cochin Jewish? So could you share a little bit about that?
Well, all right. So, many people have this notion that India has never been anti-Semitic. India has always embraced Jews with open arms, and that is 99% true.
Mm-hmm.
I would say 99.9% true, but there is one little percent that is not true.
Okay.
But then that's the case all around the world. Even if you go to a Polynesian or Micronesian island in the middle of the Pacific, you have a chance of finding anti-Semitism. It's all across the world. Yeah, so that's a given. Um, so in the meantime, I've also written a book. It's called The Real History of the Cochin Jews and Coward. For anyone who's curious, it's on Amazon. I have a very detailed account of the Cochini Jewish history there. And there I mention a very shocking piece of anti-Semitism that took place around 1,500 years ago, or 1,500, 1,600 years ago. There was this king, the Maharaja, and he went over to, he was the first one who converted to Islam, and he directly or indirectly massacred a large number of Indian Jews at that time. So there's no solid evidence. It's all speculation and oral tradition. But that, yeah, it most likely is true because if you look at the population decline in the Jewish community after that, because fast forward to 1948, just before the establishment of the State of Israel, the Jewish community's population in Kochi was 1,998, too short of 2,000, right? 2,000 people. But around 1,500 years ago, it was much more. So, according to anthropological population theories, it should quadruple or
Mm-hmm.
maybe increase eightfold, but it reduced drastically. So, a huge chunk of people were killed off, and some of them may be converted to Christianity. Um, so, really don't know what happened in the Middle Ages because you don't have any records. But the point is that there used to be anti-Semitism, which was unrecorded, and that is, of course, survived into the 20th century, into the 21st century, obviously. And to your question, growing up, I was not really very religious. It was not really important for me. So I got along really well with my classmates of all faiths
Mm-hmm.
until I reached high school. Um, in India, you call it the 11th and 12th grade.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I really got into Judaism and I really embraced my faith and I really started to become religious. And that's when, for the first time, many of my colleagues, my classmates even got to know of my ancestry, of my heritage. And then they, um, most of them were just curious because they've never seen or heard of such a faith, maybe on TV, but maybe they've visited a synagogue as a tourist attraction,
Mm-hmm.
but otherwise, no. And then some of them were a little wary because they, yes, media. They're mostly from the Islamic faith. They study about it in their religious schools and they see it
Mm-hmm.
on TV. And then, you guys are not good people. You guys are sinners. You guys are this and that. You guys kill babies. And that's the thing, but you can't really put a lot of blame on them because they were also what, 13, 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So they get a lot of from their parents, from TV, etc. And that's the only anti-Semitism that I faced in India.
Okay.
Mostly out of ignorance. Mostly
Mm-hmm.
out of ignorance. But then going on, there were, there are always black sheep in the society who, again, from media, from misunderstanding, from willful ignorance, mostly from the Islamic background, they have this sort of brotherhood with the Palestinian cause or whatever that means, and they kind of put it, they give you the sole responsibility of what, quote unquote, murdering babies. Yeah, I'm the baby killer apparently. So that's there. even
Mm,
again, if you go to Micronesian islands, you would maybe find someone of that sort. So, other than that, as we say in German, ganz und groß, it was wonderful in India. There was no anti-Semitism. On the other hand, there was a lot of people who were really curious about Judaism.
mm-hmm,
Growing up, they came to me, mostly Christians and Hindus and even Muslims. They came over to me. They wanted to learn what this is about. They were really curious because they've never seen a Jewish person before. They've never been in the inside of a synagogue. So I would invite them to my synagogue. I would show them stuff and I would explain to them what this faith is about. And in the meantime, there was a Malayalam movie that released. It's called Ezra, and Ezra portrays the Jewish people as a little cruel. Huh? So, I'm sure many of our viewers have heard about the Dibuk. It's a mythical demon that King Solomon apparently conjured up for purposes of harm on his enemies. And there was that's an ancient Jewish legend, right? So this Malayalam movie incorporated Dibuk and some sort of violence into it. And then a lot of people thought, I make Dibuks apparently. So my
when was
classmates,
this? Which period? Like,
this was 2014. So good
is
10 years ago. Good 10
okay.
years ago. Or maybe 15, 16, I don't know. But
Okay.
anyways, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And so they come to me and they say, "What is a debug? Has anyone in your family made a debug?" Like they're basically asking me, "Have you made a demon? Have you conjured up a demon with dark magic?" That's the question they're asking with full seriousness. Again, this is out of pure ignorance, right? They don't
Yeah.
know. They don't know. So I explained to them, okay, the book is a mythical creature.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't have a secret recipe in my basement. I don't have the powers to make a book. and
Oh.
and then there are some innocent anti-Semitism from my Christian friends.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're the one who killed Jesus. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, backtrack a bit. Have you read your New Testament? Crucifixion is a Roman punishment. There's no crucifixion in the Jewish penal code. It's
Yeah.
a Roman punishment, and he was persecuted. He was tried and executed by the Romans, right?
Yeah.
Because he apparently rebelled against Caesar.
Mm-hmm.
He was a threat to his authority, that was the charge against him.
Yeah.
Oh, but you didn't say that he is our Messiah. Well, sure, because we don't accept him as the Messiah. That's why we said, should we have lied? Again, and then I jokingly reply, all right, you have to be thankful that if we actually did it, you have to be thankful because otherwise you only have Christmas. We gave you Easter because apparently we killed him and that's why he resurrected apparently, which is why you got Easter, right? So you have to thank us because we gave you another festival. That's how I jokingly reply. And yeah, so other than that, there was no anti-Semitism of any sort. It was pretty harmonious in India. Ganz und groß. It was very harmonious and it was a good time.
Yeah.
That's how I would define my childhood.
Okay. But I think this whole thing about lot of the church still believes that Jews killed Jesus is just like one of the worst things one can. It's actually so, even if you look at the New Testament, it's so unbiblical
Mhm,
because back then it was really all Jewish people there.
mhm,
So even if you consider that the Jews killed Jesus, but it's also the Jews who actually um, carried forward with giving them the, either the Torah or the New Testament. it,
mhm.
it was only Jewish people, so I mean
Right.
it's just crazy, which has unfortunately led to like almost 2000 years of anti-Semitism
But partially, if you think about it, it's really
anti-Semitism.
funny because I haven't read the New Testament really well, but there is a whole chapter dedicated to this. So I think it was Peter who jumps in front of Jesus and says, "I won't let you go to Jerusalem to die." So Jesus said, "I have to go to Jerusalem to fulfill my father's plan,"
Yeah,
and he wants to die basically. And then Peter stops him and says, "I won't let you go, Master." And Jesus tells him, "Get behind me, Satan." Get behind me, Satan. Do not prevent me from fulfilling the Father's mission.
yeah,
So basically, Jesus wants to go and die
yeah,
for the
yeah,
sins of mankind,
yeah, yeah.
according to the theology. So had Jesus not died on the cross,
Mhm.
then he's a nobody.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that he has so much significance is
Mm-hmm.
because he apparently died for our sins, right?
Mm-hmm.
So had he not done that, who is he? He has no significance, he has no relevance.
Yeah.
And if the Jews indeed did kill him, then again, you should be thankful
Yeah.
because we
Absolutely.
gave you the savior, right? So yeah, it's really funny. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
but
It's
it's
tragic, but
yeah,
it's funny. It's a
yeah, it is.
tragic comedy. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so um you've already answered my question actually about whether you faced anti-Semitism in India.
Mhm,
But how would you distinguish yourself growing up in India as from like a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu, that you
mhm,
were Jewish? Because you said around teenage years that you got more into your faith, and that's when many people got curious. So,
mhm.
um, how would you distinguish? Like, if you attended a regular school
Right.
or a Jewish school?
No, there was
Regular
no Jewish
school.
schools at the time I grew up.
Okay,
So
so.
yeah, there was pretty much nothing to distinguish you. That's what Jawaharlal Nehru said during the inception of the Indian state in 47, is that unity in diversity, right?
Mm-hmm,
That's the thing. You really can't distinguish a person in India if you don't know his name or her name,
mm-hmm,
and if you don't see his attire, what he's wearing. And if you take those two things away, you can't really know.
mm-hmm,
You can't even know what state he's from or she's from, right? You have all sorts of people in it. You have very fair people and very dark people. You have all sorts of people in it. You have all religions,
yeah.
almost all religions you find in India. So there was nothing to distinguish me. We were really united. So my best friends were Christians and Hindus and Muslims, and we hang around together. There was absolutely nothing to distinguish me, except for the fact that food. So
Mm-hmm,
I can't eat non-kosher.
yeah,
Uh, but that was not too much of a problem because you have an abundance of naturally kosher food in India,
yeah,
and well, you don't eat pork, but neither the Muslims don't eat pork
yeah.
as well. So I could go to a restaurant, I could order a vegetable burger, and then the Muslim sitting next to me would order a veg burger as well, and then it's fine. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm,
there's nothing. There was absolutely nothing to distinguish me.
right.
Um, Except the only way that someone would know that I'm Jewish is if they would ask me
Okay.
directly. And
Mm,
and and there's no reason to ask me because you don't expect to see a Jew in India, right? So it never came up, and there's nothing to distinguish. Really, there was nothing. Because
okay.
you look the same, you speak the same language, you eat the same food mostly,
Mm,
and there was no distinction. No, not like Europe, not like the US.
okay. But the Pardesi synagogue, the street in Cochin,
Mhm.
that became quite a famous tourist attraction
Right,
also, right? So,
right.
um, how would you see that street, or did you grow up close to that street, or would you have
Okay.
only Jewish tourists coming, or?
Yeah, so I've mentioned that in detail in the book that I mentioned earlier, the real history of the Cochin Jews uncovered, but I'll go to it briefly now.
Mm-hmm,
So in Kochi, there are two separate Jewish communities:
mm-hmm,
the Paradesi community and the Cochini and the Malabari community.
mm-hmm,
Together, they make up the Cochini Jewish community, right?
mm-hmm,
So the Cochini Jewish community has two subdivisions: the Paradesi and the Malabari. And people who are familiar with Indian languages know the meaning right away. Paradesi means foreigner,
mm-hmm,
right? And Malabari means Keralite or South Indian. Huh?
mm-hmm.
So the Malabari Jewish community is 2,000 plus years old. We
Okay.
came from, so the Malabari community came from modern day Iraq, Baghdad, Nineveh, Yemen. So we are Mizrahi, right? Middle Eastern, right? So we look brown, and we have black hair,
Mm-hmm,
right? And even today, if you take a Yemenite Jew who has never been to India in Israel, you take a Yemenite Jewish person or an Iraqi Jewish person who's never been to India in Israel today, he looks just like an Indian, right? You can't, if you tell somebody else he's an Indian, they will believe you right away, right? So the Mizrahi genotype, the Middle Eastern genotype, and the Indian genotype are really similar.
mm-hmm,
So we are the Malabaris. So this is 2,000 plus years old. The Paradesi came a lot later. They're
mm-hmm,
only like 400 or so years old. They came from Spain and Portugal.
Yeah.
after the Spanish
Spanish
Inquisition,
Inquisition. Yeah.
Queen Isabella. So they are Ashkenazi. Well, they're Sephardi, but
Sephardi.
they you could call them because they're European, right? They're white skinned, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the two distinct communities. Even though the white skinned Jews came later,
Mm-hmm.
they enjoyed much more wealth and power because they were among the first Europeans to arrive, and the Maharaja of Cochin had a soft spot for them because one, they had money, and two, they were Europeans. They were
Right.
exotic looking, right? So they
Okay.
were white, right? So they had more power, right? So they established the Paradesi synagogue. They had so much wealth. So the Paradesi community, the white Jewish community, took up a lot of power and a lot of influence, and slowly they encroached upon the Malabari, the original settlement, and then there was a lot of infighting in between. I wouldn't go into detail. There was lots of infighting, and it's all detailed in my book. But
Mm-hmm.
it was terrible because, as they say, two Jews, three views, right? So they also say that if there were no Palestinians or if there were no Arabs, then we would end up fighting each other, right? So that's
Yeah.
in our nature. It's unfortunate, but that's in our nature.
Yeah.
So a lot of infighting, and that's why there's a misconception that Paradesi is the only community in Kochi. That's not true,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I did not grow up in that street. That was the European street.
Mm-hmm.
That was the European synagogue. I used to go there, but that was not my synagogue. My synagogue was a mere 11 kilometers away.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Kadawumbagan synagogue of Ernakulam, right?
Okay.
It's around it's the oldest synagogue in the Commonwealth countries, right?
Oh,
It's the oldest active synagogue in the Commonwealth countries. I will share some pictures with you so that you can share with your
yeah.
viewers. My uncle runs it even today. It's well maintained. It's larger. It's around 825 years old. It's
What's your uncle's name?
Elias Yosefai.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of photos of him. I think he's quite well known among
Oh
the
yeah.
Jewish
Oh yeah, he is.
communities.
You're right.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so he's like a one-man army, right? He has had contributions from Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Sikhs, all Jews all over the world to restore the synagogue, and he's done it as a one-man army. And the synagogue is again twice as old as the Paradesi synagogue,
Mm-hmm.
larger, more beautiful, and richer with history, right?
Mm-hmm.
So so that's my synagogue, right? That's where I go to. So yeah,
And when
so
did your ancestors move from the Middle East? So
2000 plus years.
so it was during the Second Temple time or
Right, right. So after the
the
destruction of the
destruction?
temple, the tribes were scattered around, and
Mm-hmm.
two tribes were taken as slaves to Baghdad, Nineveh,
Mm-hmm.
and the Iraqi belt, the modern
Mm-hmm.
day Iraqi belt, and from there they came overland and on boats, in search of new life in the east. And the Cochin community has connections even to King Solomon because
Mm-hmm.
they say that King Solomon had a number of concubines, and there were Keralite women
Mm-hmm.
who were also taken as concubines, and the tusks of elephants were
Yeah,
also, and elephants and mahots were also taken to Judea, Samaria,
yeah,
Israel,
yeah.
for the service of King Solomon.
Mm-hmm.
Spices,
Yeah,
obviously, and
mentioned.
sandalwood.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a little town called Salem in
Yeah.
South India. It's modern day Tamil Nadu, and it came from Jerusalem. That's a
Mm-hmm.
popular theory.
Yeah.
Salem, Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. So yeah, lots of things. If you dig up a random spot in Kerala or Tamil Nadu in South India, chances are you dig a couple of meters, you will find a Jewish artifact. They used to call it the Jerusalem of the East. It was full of Jews back then, full of Jews. It's like modern day New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
Borough Park or Brooklyn. That
Mm-hmm.
was how it was back then, but it was
Yeah.
thousands of years.
It is so interesting because I think India was also like Ophir mentioned in the Bible in
Oh
Solomon's
yes,
times,
yes,
and
yeah.
so India was so important actually back then, and it's just a shame actually no one knows about. I mean,
Hmm.
not many people, at least in the West, know
Right,
about this.
right,
And
right.
also in the um, Middle Ages, even Gulf of Aden, that area was so important, and there was constant trading between the Malabar,
Mm-hmm.
the south of India, and
Right.
the Middle East. So that's how there was so much movement between the Jews back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. So
Right.
yeah, so it's very important. Now I want to go to a very important question, which is
Mm-hmm.
very relevant in today's
Mm-hmm.
world, because um, one of the arguments that the pro-Palestinian people had is that Zionism is almost like a dirty word. They want
Mm-hmm.
to, project it as a dirty word and say that it's like an European colonial project, which
Mm-hmm.
is like
Mm-hmm.
so stupid because
Mm-hmm.
Zionism is A, it's biblical, and B, Zionism is okay. So you, as a Jewish person who lived in India, who grew up in India, what does Zionism mean to you, and how important is Zionism to your faith?
So before I go into how important it is to me personally, if you look at Israel's current population now,
Mhm.
clear majority are not European Jews.
Yeah,
They're Mizrahi in origin.
yeah.
So I would wonder that, the pioneers of Zionism back then, starting from Theodor Herzl to Golda Meir or Ben Gurion,
Mhm.
when they were in the initial birth pangs of the state of Israel,
Mhm.
fulfilling the prophecy, they would have not believed you had you made a time machine and went back and told them that in the year 2024, majority of the state that you're building now is populated by non-European Jews.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
would not have believed you, right? Herzl himself said that, Herzl himself was an anti-Hebrewist, right? Because Hebrew was in the phase of resurrection, and Eliezer ben Yehuda was rebuilding and resurrecting Hebrew after it being dead for 2,000 years. At that time, Herzl was not in support of it. Herzl said, for the new state of Israel, for the new Zionist state, let German be the lingua franca.
Mhm.
Who can order a cup of coffee in Hebrew? No one can. So let it be German. That's what he said, right? So, so that's where the misconception that it's a European colonial project came from.
Mhm.
But it's a, as you said, purely biblical.
Mhm.
Two, it's well rooted in archaeology. You dig again, as I said, you dig up Israel, and you'll find layer upon layer upon layer of Jewish history.
Yeah.
Dig as far as you want. Islam wasn't even an idea back then.
Mhm.
Muhammad was not even born. It was centuries and centuries and millennia ago.
Yeah.
It was Jewish, and these are things that are conveniently ignored and
Mhm.
willfully rejected. They
Yeah.
know they're wrong, but they reject it. It's I don't know. Jesus was a Palestinian Muslim. Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, I just fed the cat food to my unicorn this morning. Right. So yeah, so coming to my personal view of Zionism, um, how do I put this? What's the, have you eaten dosha and sambar?
Yeah, of course.
Right? I think it's South Indian, but everybody knows
Yeah.
dosha, and it's a very, very famous dish. So dosha is like for the European viewers, you're not familiar with it. Dosha is like a flat bread, and sambar is a delicious side dish that it's a liquid that with vegetables, with the
Mhm.
masala, and then you eat it together with the dosha, right? Me without Zionism would be dosha without sambar, right? I don't have a better way of answering that.
That's a
So
good way. Yeah.
yeah,
It just
yeah.
goes
So
together. It's a natural fit,
yeah,
right? You can't
sure. Yeah,
imagine
I
one
mean,
without the other. Mhm.
absolutely, right. So as they say, if when a Jew goes to Israel first for the first time, it's not the first time, it's a homecoming.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever you say, whatever you think, whatever you believe in, whatever watermelon flag, which incidentally, the watermelons were brought to the land of Israel by Zionist pioneers, by the way. They were
Yeah.
cultivated in the desert by Israelis, by Jewish people, by the
Yeah.
way. Whatever you say, it's inseparable. As Mark Twain, the American writer, once put it in his little essay on the Jews,
Mm,
is that the last line was, I'm not paraphrasing, it's almost the same. He says that, the Persians, the Assyrians, the Romans, the Greek, the Arabs, these great civilizations made a huge clang and a bang and they disappeared,
mm,
right? They're not there anymore.
mm,
But the Jew has always been tiny in number. He has been blindfolded and his hands have been tied behind his back, and that's how he fought his fight. And he's still alive. The Jew is immortal. What is the secret to his immortality? That's the question he ends his essay with.
mhm.
And to me personally, yeah, dosha and sambar. Zionism, there's no me without Zionism. There's no Tapan without Zionism.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
That's a great answer. Yeah, that's why I don't understand, when I hear about these anti-Zionist Jews in America, I'm like, what is anti-Zionist Jews?
Oh,
I mean,
it's a
how
mental
can you
disorder.
call yourself Jew and be anti-Zionist? It's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, I understand that. It's just they're sick, and I don't say it with spite or anything. I say it with sympathy. It's that these people don't know. It's just ignorance, right? Nothing against them, right? Because a couple of years ago, I used to be really agitated and upset when something politically bad happens or geopolitically unfavorable. I used to be really agitated and frustrated and sad, and I'm thinking now, why am I agitated? What difference does it bring, right? So
Mm,
let's say a political candidate who is pro-Israel loses an election in any given country. I
mm,
would be upset. But why should I be upset? What difference can I, if I'm upset, will that candidate come back to power? No, right? So I know that whatever happens, Israel and the Jewish people are immortal, right? We have survived worse than October 7th. We have
yeah.
survived worse than whatever is going on now. So it's really okay. So I don't really worry about anti-Zionist Jews. It's
Just a minute. Tapan, can you hear me? Yeah, now you're back on. There was a bit of disturbance, but that's
Did I
okay.
repeat that or
No, I could hear it. Your face
okay?
was frozen, but that's fine. Something very interesting, like what you mentioned in Israel, when you go and you see like large part of the population is Mizrahi Jews.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I was like, imagine my surprise the first time I went to Israel,
Hmm.
which was quite some time ago, but you hear all the time that modern state of Israel is, yeah, mainly European colonizers and all that. My heart didn't want to believe because I'm 100% Zionist, and
Hmm.
I'm like, but when you go there, I'm like, but all these people look more like me than my
Hmm.
husband
Hmm.
who's blonde
Hmm.
and white, I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, I feel so much at home here because,
Right.
but it's just the narrative that you hear in the media. Yeah, it's crazy. But I love the yeah, the analogy that you gave with dosa and sambar. It's really inseparable, Jews and uh, Zionism or the land of Israel, which is perfect. Thank you.
And I would just want to add that
Yeah.
some of these Jewish people who are anti-Zionist, very small minority,
Mm-hmm.
I would call them undercooked doshas, right? There's nothing wrong with them. They're amazing. God loves them just like any other Jew,
Yeah.
right? They're undercooked. So the batter is still sour, right?
Mm.
They don't go well with sambar. Sambar is the state of Israel. They don't go well because they're undercooked, right? Take them back into the tawa and put it there for 2 or 3 minutes, make them well cooked, and put it back onto the plate, and then they would appreciate the sambar,
Yeah,
right? Then
that's
they would go
that's
well with this,
great. Yes,
right? That's
they
the
need
issue.
more teaching. They need more solid teaching,
They
right?
need to know that without the state of Israel, they're dead.
Yeah.
That's why I
And
said put them back into the tawa and they would know. And it's
yeah,
not
and
your job or
today's
my job, it's
yeah.
Hashem's job to put them back into the tawa so that they
Yeah.
would hopefully understand and appreciate the sambar, which is the
And
state of
today's
Israel.
situation just shows that, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's just like with such anti-Semitism, it's crazy. And even when Hamas monsters entered Israel, they
Mhm.
didn't make a distinction between the peace-loving Jews and the Zionist Jews or whatever,
Yeah.
they're just killed. Or even
It-
with Muslims or any other
right.
Thai workers, they don't care
Hmm.
to them.
I mean, they killed dogs and
Yeah,
cats,
exactly.
right? So
They are just monsters. Now,
yeah.
in Europe, you live in Europe, and I know you're part of a Russian Jewish community, but wherever you go, and what's people's reaction when they hear, oh, well, you're not a Hindu, you're from India, and they naturally tend to say namaste and ask you about your Hindu customs, but then you say, well, I'm actually Jewish. So how do people react?
Yeah, most people don't know. Yeah, most people don't know. They don't you again, you can't that's something I'm trying to change, with my book and with the translations that I'm doing by Indian Jewish people living in Israel. They have their autobiographies. So
Mm,
there's this guy called Yossi. He is now 75 years old. He served in the 1967 and 73 wars, Yom Kippur Six-Day War. He took on upper echelons of the Israeli Agricultural Ministry, and he met with presidents and prime ministers, contributed to feeding Israel. He has written an autobiography purely in Hebrew. He speaks only Malayalam and Hebrew. So I
mm,
translated it to English. It's gonna release in a week or two, Bizrat Hashem. So these are projects that I'm involved in to let people know that there are Indian Jews, and
yeah.
and the Indian Jews are not some sort of converted race or anything.
Mhm,
We are
mhm,
a very, very ancient community with
yeah,
deep roots to the land of Israel, deeper than the Ashkenazi Jews,
yeah.
I would say, because Ashkenazi Jews have, well, all Jews trace their ancestry back to the land of Israel, but the Mizrahis, the Cochinis, the Indians have an extra deeper connection, and and it's such a shame and such a tragedy that people don't know, right? You talk about India, Hinduism, and that's it.
Mm,
They don't even know that there are Indian Christians or Indian Muslims even. They say Hindus and that's it. Cow worshippers. That's the first thing that comes,
yeah.
right? Not that there's anything wrong with Hinduism. I love Hinduism and its rich culture. Theologically, it's a different matter, but culturally speaking, wonderful civilization. But
Mm,
that's not India. That's not only India, right? That's a major part, but there are every single religion there, and people don't know, right? So in my workplace and also out on the streets or wherever, when they somehow come to know that I'm Jewish, it's disbelief, and then I have to say, Google my name
mm,
or Google Indian Jews.
yeah,
That's all you need to do, right?
yeah.
And it's mostly frustrating on social media as well. So I am just like in this podcast, or
Mm,
I'm involved in a number of Jewish media, right?
mhm,
And when they see my name, they don't know anything. But then they click on my name, they go to my profile, and they're like, okay, is this guy, this man, or this woman? My wife, that is, on my
okay,
profile picture. So
yeah.
again, the level of ignorance, I'm demonstrating the level of ignorance. So
Mhm,
they half the time they refer to me as a woman because they think I'm my wife, right? They see the profile picture of us together.
mm,
And half the time they ask, listen to me, you're an Indian, you cannot be Jewish. That's so if I got a nickel every time I heard that, I would be a rich man now, right? So so that's the thing, ignorance, pure ignorance, and most of the time you can cure that ignorance if you just tell them, okay, you did not know, Google it, and you would know. And most of the time they do, and
mm,
they are really curious. Then they want to know more. Some of them are hell bent on their ignorance,
mm,
and they would not accept, but they are exclusively on social media. And then they just, huff and puff away and say that all Jews are Europeans and
mm,
true Jews don't exist anymore, Black Hebrew Israelite types,
yeah,
and all those delusional, empty-headed
yeah,
people, and that's how it is. So yeah, to answer your question, it's disbelief, ignorance, but then most of it is easily solvable. Most people are open to knowing more, and then yeah, day
yeah.
by day.
And I think that's why such conversations are very important, and people like you and I mean, I was working on a book project, like culinary book project actually, where I have the recipes and culinary history of an Indian Jewish lady. living in North America for many years, but she's from the Bene Israeli and
Mhm.
Baghdadi Jewish
Mumbai,
community.
Mumbai, yeah.
Mumbai, yeah, she grew up in Mumbai. And it's so important because precisely for such times like these, when the pro-Palestinian or large part of the world has this stupid, ignorant narrative that
Hmm.
Israel is a colonial, white colonial project. It's just
Hmm.
so stupid. And
Hmm.
yeah, so it's very important to have
See,
like,
they're Arab Jews. They're a little more well known than Indian Jews, the Arab speaking Jews who speak Arabic.
the Mizrahi.
From so they're yeah they're like Moroccan, Tunisian, Algerian, Egyptian,
Yeah.
Yemenite, Syrian, Lebanese Jews. They're a little more well known. How many people know about Chinese Jews?
Mm. The
There
Kai.
are Chinese Jews with typical Asian eyes, with slit eyes,
Yeah.
right? Nowadays it's racist to say slit eyes, but that's Asian eyes, right?
Yeah.
So you would never expect to see a Jewish person with Asian eyes, but there exists a big community that used to be, but now most of them are in Israel. There's
Mm.
some remaining in Kaifeng in China.
Yeah.
They went over from Israel hundreds of years ago during the Silk Route time, and they were trading and they settled in China. They're still there. It's a Chinese Jewish community, right? And they're purely black Jews from Ethiopia. They're
Mm.
more well known, but lots of people even then don't know about black Jews.
Yeah.
Especially in India, you have this notion that a Jewish person is a white person.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Judaism is a white religion. That's what they think, right? They're purely African Ethiopian pure Jews. And even then, in as much as it's extremely difficult to convert to Judaism, there are successful Japanese converts. My best friend, Yosef, his Japanese name is Takahiro Yoshioka.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant guy, purely Jewish. He converted through Chabad, accepted all over the world. Every ultra-Orthodox Haredi would accept him as a Jew because he converted through Chabad,
Mm-hmm.
right? He is Japanese, purely Japanese individual, but purely Jewish, right? Anyone of any color can be Jewish. And
Yeah.
again, ignorance.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Ignorance is the food that these people uh, gorge on. Yeah.
Now, I have one question. This was not the topic, but I'm just letting the conversation flow. But
Mhm.
probably it's a controversial question. But what, according to you, is the reason for so many different colors other than people converting? Is
Mhm.
it largely due to assimilation and intermarriage, or
Well, after 2000 plus years of exile, tell me, Paushali, what exactly is a Jew supposed to look like?
I don't know, really?
So
It,
it's even in the Bible. They're in all four corners of the
yeah,
world,
true.
right? So, not saying the earth is flat, it's not flat, but when I say four corners, I mean
Yeah,
all
uh,
all
yeah,
parts of the world,
yeah,
right? Because
absolutely.
I have to clear these things up because of the
Yeah,
internet culture today. Oh, he said four corners. He's a flat earther. That's gonna be in the comments, right? So yeah, people are incredibly stupid. So I have to, make everything as clear as possible, or as we say in German, klar und deutlich. But yeah, when they went over to all four corners of the world, the Jewish people, if you look at history, never, ever, ever, ever overpowered any other civilization.
mm,
We always adapted,
yeah,
which is why you have languages like Yiddish,
yeah,
Judeo-Arabic,
mm,
Judeo-Malayalam, Ladino, right? These are languages that are mixed with Hebrew or Aramaic with the
mm,
local language. I'm sure
right,
you're familiar with Yiddish.
yeah,
It's Jewish German,
yeah,
right? German mixed with Hebrew and Aramaic.
mm,
Ladino is Jewish Spanish,
mm,
right? It's Spanish mixed with Judeo-Malayalam is Malayalam mixed with Hebrew.
yeah,
And so that's the proof that Jewish people never overpowered. They never imposed their language, their culture, anything.
mm,
They adapted. They adapted the clothing, the
mm,
food. Indian Jewish people cook Iraqi and Indian food,
yeah,
right? Brazilian Jewish people make Brazilian food with açaí and
yeah,
with all those Brazilian delicacies with the Jewish twist to it,
kosher laws.
right? Yeah. So we always adapt, we always assimilate, right?
Mm,
That's in our nature, and we contribute to that society.
Yeah, I wanted to say exactly. Yeah.
We contribute in the best way possible
Yeah.
with doctors, with
Mm,
scientists, with Nobel Prize winners for that matter,
mm,
with pioneers in the field of city planning and health administration, sanitation, you name it, right? Which is why you have all these American successful business people from the Jewish community all across the world, right? Um, Bank of Baroda, I think, no, not Bank, Bank of India, BOI, Bank of India was established with the help of a very prominent Jewish businessman. He contributed to, yeah,
Actually, many people don't know, but Mumbai and Calcutta, many of the most important buildings were by Jewish people. There was
exactly,
Sassoon
exactly,
job.
right?
And in Calcutta, all the big Ezra building, which is
Hmm.
the historic life insurance Corporation of India building, these were all built by Jewish people.
Absolutely. So
So,
again, we contribute as a society. And over the years, I'm sure that they intermarried, right? So as you know, it's a maternal religion. So maybe a Jewish woman got married to a non-Jewish local.
mm,
They had children who were purely Jewish, but
mm,
they had the color of the father.
mm,
And then the next generation goes, that's why that should be the only logical answer. So why
yeah,
are there black Jewish people?
yeah.
That
Mm,
happened in Ethiopia.
mm.
And you have an entire generation and a population of black, purely Jewish people.
And we don't know what
That's it.
conditions they lived in exile. Exile was when they were exiled,
Mm.
it was a forced exile
Right,
largely. So
right.
we don't know what they faced. So
Yeah.
yeah, but we stand on the promise that Hashem says he's gonna regather the Jewish people from
Hmm.
the four corners of the world and bring them back to the land of Israel. So
Right.
that's this great promise.
Hmm.
Yeah. Now, what legacy of faith would you like to pass on to the next generation?
Oh, well, how should I answer that question? Well, Judaism, of course.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
But
what legacy am I?
proud
What,
Jewish,
well, obviously,
word of
yeah, that goes
inspiration for.
that goes without well what should I pass on to my children, Bizrat Hashem? It's just well, it goes without saying, of course, Judaism, Zionism, of course, yeah, obviously, but also most importantly, alongside Judaism and Zionism, goes without saying, critical thinking.
Mm-hmm,
Hmm? Critical thinking. Why? Oh my God, why are you Jewish?
mm,
Why should you be a Zionist?
okay.
Critical, logical answers, right?
Mm,
I want to instill in my children and also in the children of others who come to me to learn Hebrew.
yeah.
Why are you learning Hebrew? Why should you continue being Jewish,
Mm,
right? If you have a doubt, does Hashem exist? Should
mm-hmm,
I be an atheist? Should I go to another religion? Should I go to the East and become a Buddhist?
mm,
Whatever your question is, why you should not do that. Why are you here? Why should you continue in a clear, logical, critical thinking way, right? I want to instill that in them, not just in my children, but in the, if possible, it's not just for Judaism or Jewish people or for Israel, it's for the general good of the world. If
yeah.
I could instill a iota of critical thinking ability in the pro-Palestinians,
Mm-hmm,
that would be amazing. Because just think unbiased,
mm,
critical, logical thinking, man. It's not too much to ask for. That's the biggest wealth and treasure that I would give. I think it's not even Judaism that I would pass on to my children. That's going to be the biggest wealth. It's the ability to think critically,
right.
the ability to question and come to a logical conclusion, which
Mm,
is more valuable to Hashem than Judaism, I dare say, because the name Israel means
mm,
he who wrestles with God,
yeah.
right? God elevates the people who wrestle with him
Mm,
biblically, right? All other religions teach you submit to God,
mm,
submit to Jesus Christ, submit to Allah, submit to this, submit to that. Judaism says, don't submit, wrestle, question, question God, right? Noah did not question. Noah just accepted. Noah put up the ark and he had the stuff. Abraham questioned. Abraham protested, right? regards to, and also in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and then Jonah the prophet protested. So Eliyahu the prophet protested. Moshe protested. You fight against God. You question his choices, and then it's a push and pull relationship with God, right? You interact with God. You're not a slave.
Mhm.
You served your time in Egypt. You have your it's your father, right? Avinu Malkenu, right? That's the
Mm,
yeah. So that's the thing. So that's what I want to pass on to my children. Critical thinking, question God,
mm.
speak to God, fight him, and then he will elevate you, right? That's what
That's
you should do.
beautiful. That's beautiful
Yeah.
because you have a, just like with a father, you have a relationship with God.
Right,
And
right.
yes, the word Israel, there it is,
Yeah,
wrestle with God.
right.
And we see also in the Tehillim, in the Psalms, right, how
Mhm.
David or the psalmist wrestle with God first.
Exactly.
And then it always eventually led to
Right.
trusting God and worshiping
Exactly.
Him. But
Exactly. That's how it
yeah,
should come out. Again, just to clarify, I don't want to pass on Judaism as it is to my children. Of course, I want to
mhm,
do that, but that takes a backseat. If
mhm,
I teach them good critical thinking, they would automatically come to that, right? That's the only thing you need to teach, right? I think that's the only thing any parent needs to teach.
mm, that's
That's
beautiful.
something that's really lacking. It's very easy to teach, but
Mm.
it's really valuable. It's a paradox, right?
Mm.
Yeah,
Well, that's beautiful because it also gives freedom to the children as well. How my
exactly.
parents are not
You
forcing,
said it.
but they are allowing me to
You
ask
said it.
questions. Yeah, because
What
I
did
also have teenagers, and I know
right.
that there is no point in forcing at the moment.
Nope, nope.
They are going through their own identity, whatever, and
Right,
they should
right,
feel free to
right, right.
ask. So
What
that's
did Hashem say when he gave the mitzvot, with the commandments? He introduced the commandments, when he gave it to Moshe Rabbeinu. He did not say, I am the Lord your God, the creator of the universe and your creator. No, he could have said that. That's the greatest achievement. He did not say that. He said, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. That's
mm,
how he introduces himself, right? At the beginning of the Ten Commandments. I am the Lord your God, the one who brought you out of Egypt, the house of bondage,
mm,
not the creator of the universe. So
mm.
that in itself says freedom is the biggest thing, biggest gift, or the biggest thing that you can cherish. I'm the God who gave you freedom. And
Yeah,
then he goes on to give you the commandments. Freedom is of utmost importance. So
that's great.
that's
Okay,
why.
well, we are coming to wrap up this discussion. It's been really, really great. Thank you so much. But one last thing, in this world of rampant anti-Semitism and demonization of Israel and the Jewish people, what message do you have for the world or for those people who are really sitting on the fence or who are really being like the silent majority, as people say? What message do you have?
If you can afford it, go to Israel. If it is practical, go to Israel for a week. It's very cheap. Assuming you're living in a Western country, there are tour packages. Go for a week. Go with a Christian group, a worship group, a pilgrimage group. Go for a week, right? That's all you need to do. And then you would know. If you can't do that, if you can't do that, go to your favorite internet browser and search the Case for Israel PDF free download. Just search that, right? It's a book written by Alan Dershowitz.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think about Alan Dershowitz. Every person has his own race or her, whatever. But read that book. It's a completely unbiased book. It's a very short book. It's not very long.
Mm.
Read it. Just it will be worthwhile. Just read it, and then if you have anything against Israel, I would give you the right. You have, of course you have the right, but I would accept it, right?
Mm.
But read that book or take a trip to Israel. Just one week. It's not too expensive. There are regular tour packages. Just do it, and then that's all. I don't need to say anything more, right? That's it.
Wow, that is fantastic. I
Mhm.
couldn't agree more, especially visit Israel. I think that's the best. It speaks for itself. And for
Right.
our viewers, I can put up all the links to Tapan's books. And also, I mean, yeah, I know several tour operators in Israel, and yeah, so that's fantastic. Thank you, Tapan, so much for joining me today.
Oh, the pleasure has all been mine.
Thank you.